I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to plot revenge. Not me, Ellen Harper, the one who baked cookies for the PDA, who smiled through every family photo, who believed in love even when it bruised. But life has a way of rewriting your story, doesn't it? It takes your soft edges and sharpens them into something dangerous. My story begins the day I found out my husband, David, had taken a $500,000 loan in my name. It ends with me taking everything back, but not without a cost that still haunts me. It was a Tuesday in October, the kind of crisp morning where the leaves glowed red and gold outside our Connecticut home. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through emails, when I saw it, a notice from a bank I didn't recognize. Final notice. Payment overdue, $12,456.23. My heart stuttered. I hadn't opened an account with them. I clicked the attachment, and there it was, me name, my social security number, a loan for $500,000. My hands shook as I dialed the bank, my voice steady only because I hadn't yet grasped the betrayal. The clerk was polite but firm. The loan was in my name, taken out 2 years ago, secured against our house. Our house, the one we'd bought together, where our daughter, Lily, had learned to ride her bike in the driveway. David was at work, or so I thought. I called him, my words tumbling out in a panic. He didn't answer. I texted, waited, called again. Nothing. By the time he walked through the door that evening, his tie loosened and his smile too wide. I was a storm waiting to break. David, I said, holding up the bank notice, what is this? His face didn't change, not at first. He took the paper, glanced at it, and shrugged. Must be a mistake, he said, tossing it onto the counter. But his eyes, they flickered, just for a second, and I knew. I knew he was lying. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing, wondering how the man I'd loved for 15 years could do this. We'd met in college, 2 kids with big dreams and bigger hearts. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who made you feel like you were the only one in the room. We built a life together, a daughter, a home, a future. Or so I thought. The next morning, I dug deeper. I called the bank again, demanded records, and found the truth buried in fine print. David had forged my signature, used my identity, and funneled the money into a business venture I knew nothing about. A failing venture, apparently, because the payments had stopped 6 months ago. I confronted him again, this time with evidence. He didn't deny it. Instead, he laughed a cold, hollow sound that made my skin crawl. You'll figure it out, Ellen, he said, pouring himself a scotch. You always do. That's when I saw it. The man I loved was gone, replaced by someone who saw me as a means to an end. He didn't care about the debt, the house, or me. He cared about winning. And that's when I decided he wouldn't. I started small. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel who didn't flinch when I told her the story. We'll get him, she said, her eyes glinting with the kind of fire I needed. She dug into David's finances, his business, his secrets. I learned he'd been living a double life, fancy dinners, trips to Vegas, a mistress who wore diamonds he couldn't afford. All on my dime, my name, my future. The rage built slowly, an ember in my chest that grew into a blaze. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for justice, for Lily, for the woman I'd been before he broke her. Rachel found a way to freeze the loan, to protect the house, but it wasn't enough. David was slippery, always one step ahead. He hired his own lawyer, a slick man in a suit who twisted every fact until I doubted my own reality. The divorce papers came next, served to me at the kitchen table while Lily was at school. David sat across from me, smirking. You'll get nothing, he said. The house, the savings, it's all tied up. You should have been smarter, Ellen. His words cut deeper than the betrayal itself. He thought I was weak, that I'd crumble. He was wrong. I started gathering evidence, quietly, methodically. Bank statements, emails, text messages he thought he'd deleted. I became a ghost in my own life, watching him, learning his patterns. He was careless, leaving his laptop open, his phone unlocked. I found proof of the mistress, of offshore accounts, of lies so deep they made my stomach turn. But I didn't act, not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. Lily was my anchor through it all. At 13, she was old enough to sense the tension, but too young to understand it. Why are you and Dad fighting? She asked one night, her brown eyes wide with worry. I hugged her, promised her everything would be okay, even as my heart broke. I couldn't tell her the truth, not yet, but I swore I'd protect her, no matter what it took. By the time the divorce hearings began, I was ready. Rachel and I had built a case so tight it could choke. We presented the forged loan documents, the hidden accounts, the proof of his infidelity. David's lawyer tried to spin it, but the judge wasn't fooled. I sat in the courtroom, my hands folded, my face calm, while inside I was screaming. David's smirk faded as the judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. The debt was his. And the business? I'd found a way to claim half its assets, enough to rebuild what he'd taken. But revenge isn't sweet, not really. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt no triumph, only a hollow ache. I'd won, but at what cost? Lily still loved her father, even after everything. And Tu still loved the man he used to be. That's the thing about family. It binds you, even when it breaks you. I thought I'd taken everything back, but I was only beginning to understand what I'd lost. The weeks after the courtroom victory were a blur of paperwork and silence. I moved through the house like a stranger, touching the walls, the furniture, the life David and I had built, now tainted by his betrayal. Lily noticed the change. She'd come home from school, her backpack slung over one shoulder, and find me staring out the window, lost in thought. "Mom, you okay?" she'd ask, her voice small. I'd force a smile, ruffle her hair, and say, "Just thinking, kiddo." But I wasn't just thinking. I was planning. Winning the house and half the business wasn't enough. David had laughed at me, mocked my pain, and that laugh echoed in my head, a taunt I couldn't shake. I wanted him to feel what I felt, the gut punch of betrayal, the slow burn of losing everything. Rachel warned me to let it go. "You've got the house, Ellen. You've got Lily. Move on," she said over coffee one morning. Her voice was kind, but her eyes were wary, like she saw the storm brewing in me. I nodded, sipped my latte, and lied. "You're right. I'm done." But I wasn't. I started digging again, this time into David's business partners. His venture, a tech startup called Nexus, was a house of cards over-leveraged, under-delivering, and teetering on collapse. I found emails between David and a man named Victor Klein, a shady investor with a reputation for cutting corners. They'd been skimming profits, hiding losses, and using my loan to keep the illusion alive. Victor was the key. If I could turn him against David, I could bring the whole thing down. I met Victor at a diner outside town, a greasy place with flickering lights and coffee that tasted like regret. He was a big man, all bluster and cologne, but his eyes darted nervously when I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of the emails, bank transfers, and a ledger I'd pieced together from David's laptop. "You're in deep, Victor," I said, my voice low. "The SEC would love this." He leaned back, his jaw tight, and for a moment, I thought he'd bolt. But then he laughed, a sharp bark that reminded me of David. "You're a piece of work, Ellen. What do you want?" I wanted David to lose everything: his business, his reputation, his freedom. Victor was my way in. I offered him a deal: testify against David, hand over the real financials, and I'd keep his name out of it. He didn't trust me, not at first, but I had leverage, and he knew it. We shook hands, his grip clammy, and I felt a thrill I hadn't expected. This was power, raw and intoxicating. Back home, I kept up appearances for Lily. I cooked her favorite meals, helped with her homework, tucked her in at night. But every spare moment was spent building my case. I hired a private investigator, a gruff man named Paul who smelled like cigarettes and had a knack for finding dirt. He tailed David, caught him meeting his mistress at a hotel, snapped photos of late-night deals in parking lots. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building around him. David sensed something was off. He started calling more, showing up at the house unannounced, his charm replaced by a nervous edge. "We can work this out, Ellen," he said one night, standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. For Lily's sake. I wanted to slam the door in his face, but I let him in, let him think he had a chance. I poured him a drink, listened to his empty promises, and smiled. Inside, I was counting down the days until he'd fall. Victor came through, delivering a thumb drive with enough evidence to bury Nexus. I handed it to Rachel, who worked with a contact at the SEC. The investigation moved too fast for David to cover his tracks. By the time he realized what was happening, the feds were knocking. I watched from across the street as they led him out of his office in handcuffs, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. For a moment, our gazes met, and I saw it. Fear. He knew I'd done this. Lily was at a friend's house that day. Thank God. I couldn't face her questions, not yet. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the thumb drive, wondering if I'd gone too far. Revenge felt good, but it was a cold kind of good, like drinking whiskey on an empty stomach. It burned, and then it left you empty. I thought about calling Rachel, telling her to stop, but it was too late. The wheels were turning, and I'd set them in motion. That night, I dreamed of David, not the man who'd betrayed me, but the boy I'd met in college, the one who'd danced with me in the rain and promised me forever. I woke up crying, my pillow damp, my heart heavy with the weight of what I'd become. I'd taken everything back, just like I'd promised myself. But I hadn't counted on losing pieces of myself along the way. The fallout was swift and brutal. Nexus collapsed under the weight of the SEC investigation, its assets frozen, its investors fleeing. David was out on bail, but his reputation was in tatters. The local paper ran a story with his face on the front page, the headline screaming fraud. I read it over breakfast, my coffee growing cold as I scanned the details. They didn't mention me, not directly, but I felt the weight of every word. I'd orchestrated this, and now the world was watching. Lily came home from school that day, her face pale, her backpack dragging on the floor. "Is it true?" she asked, holding up her phone. A classmate had sent her the article. My stomach twisted. I'd wanted to shield her from this, but there she was, caught in the crossfire. "It's complicated, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. She didn't hug me back. "Did you do this to Dad?" Her voice was sharp, accusing, and it cut deeper than David's betrayal ever had. I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. I tried to keep things normal: dinner at 6, homework at 7, bedtime stories for old-time sake, but normal was gone. Lily withdrew, spending hours in her room, her laughter replaced by silence. I'd won the war, but I was losing my daughter. I started questioning everything. Had I gone too far? Was justice worth this? I called Rachel, my voice shaking. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked. She sighed, long and heavy. "You did what you had to, Ellen. But family's messy. You can't control how it lands." David wasn't done fighting. He called one night, his voice slurred with whiskey and desperation. "You think you've won?" he spat. "I'll drag you down with me." I hung up, my hands trembling, but his words lingered. He still had power, connections, secrets I hadn't uncovered. I doubled down, meeting with Paul, the investigator, to make sure we'd covered every angle. He handed me a new batch of photos: David meeting with a lawyer, David slipping an envelope to a man in a dark alley. "He's planning something," Paul said, his voice low. "Be careful." I started sleeping with a baseball bat by my bed, checking the locks twice before turning out the lights. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. I kept Lily close, driving her to school, picking her up, watching her every move. She hated it, hated me, but I couldn't lose her too. One night, she caught me checking her phone, looking for messages from David. "You don't trust me?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You're worse than him." She ran to her room, slamming the door, and I stood there, frozen, wondering if she was right. The next blow came from an unexpected place. Victor, my uneasy ally, turned on me. He sent a letter to my lawyer, claiming I'd blackmailed him, that I was complicit in Nexus's fraud. It was a lie, but a clever one, designed to muddy the waters. Rachel was furious, but she wasn't worried. "We've got the evidence," she said. "He's grasping at straws." But I wasn't so sure. Victor knew things I'd shared in that diner, things I'd trusted him to keep quiet. If he talked, I could lose everything. I met Victor again, this time in a crowded coffee shop, safety in numbers. He smirked when he saw me, leaning back in his chair like he held all the cards. "You played dirty, Ellen," he said. "Now it's my turn." I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "You turn on me, and I'll bury you deeper than David." It was a bluff, but it worked. His smirk faltered, and he agreed to offer a price. I paid him a chunk of the business assets I'd fought so hard for, and walked away feeling dirtier than ever. Lily started asking to see David. I wanted to say no, to protect her from his poison, but I couldn't. She was his daughter too, and I wouldn't be the one to break that bond. I arranged supervised visits, watching from a distance as they talked, laughed, acted like nothing had changed. It killed me, seeing her smile with him, knowing he didn't deserve it. But I saw something else too. David was softer with her, almost human. It made me wonder if there was still something worth saving in him. The trial was looming, a dark cloud on the horizon. Rachel prepped me for the stand, warning me it wouldn't be easy. "They'll try to paint you as the villain," she said. "Stay calm, stick to the truth." I nodded, but inside I was unraveling. The truth was a tangled mess of love, hate, and choices I wasn't proud of. I'd wanted justice, but I'd traded pieces of my soul to get it. As I tucked Lily into bed that night, her small hand in mine, I promised myself I'd find a way to make it right, not just for her, but for me. The courtroom was colder than I remembered, the air thick with anticipation. I sat in the witness box, my hands clasped tightly, my heart pounding like a drum. David sat across the room, his suit crisp, his face unreadable. He wouldn't look at me, not directly, but I felt his presence like a weight on my chest. The prosecutor laid out the case: fraud, forgery, embezzlement. My name came up again and again, tied to the loan, the house, the life David had gambled away. Rachel had prepared me, but nothing could soften the blow of hearing my pain dissected in front of strangers. The defense attorney was relentless. He painted me as a scorned wife, a manipulator who'd orchestrated the whole thing to ruin David. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Harper, that you coerced Victor Klein into providing false evidence?" he asked, his voice dripping with accusation. I felt the jury's eyes on me, judging, doubting. I took a breath, remembered Rachel's advice, and told the truth. No, I gave Victor a choice. He chose to save himself. The attorney smirked, but I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I wasn't the weak woman David had described. Lily wasn't allowed in the courtroom, thank God, but I knew she'd hear about it. Kids at school were cruel, and the story was spreading like wildfire. I tried to talk to her, to explain, but she'd shut me out. "I don't want to know," she'd said, her voice flat. "I just want my dad back." Her words haunted me as I testified, each one a reminder of what I was fighting for and what I was losing. After my testimony, Victor took the stand. I held my breath, praying he'd stick to our deal. He did, mostly, laying out David's scheme in excruciating detail. But he slipped in a jab, a subtle hint that I'd known more than I let on. Rachel caught it, her pen pausing mid-note, but she didn't look at me. I knew what she was thinking. We'd deal with it later. The courtroom buzzed with whispers, and I felt the tide shifting, just slightly, against me. David testified last. He was charming, contrite, the perfect picture of a man who'd made mistakes but loved his family. He talked about Lily, how he'd do anything for her, how he'd never meant to hurt me. The jury softened. I could see it in their faces. He was good, always had been, at making people believe him. But I saw the lie in his eyes, the same one I'd seen when he laughed at me over that bank notice. He wasn't sorry. He was playing a role. The trial stretched on for weeks, each day a battle. I went home exhausted, falling into bed only to lie awake, replaying every word, every glance. Lily started spending more time with her friends, avoiding me. I didn't blame her. I was a stranger to myself, consumed by this war I'd started. Rachel kept me grounded, her voice a lifeline. "You're doing this for Lily," she'd say. "Don't forget that." But I was starting to wonder if I was doing it for me. One night, David showed up at the house, uninvited, his eyes wild. "You're destroying everything," he said, his voice low and dangerous. I stood my ground, the baseball bat hidden behind the door. "You did that yourself," I replied. He stepped closer, and for a moment, I thought he might hit me. But then he deflated, his shoulders slumping. "I loved you, Ellen," he said, almost a whisper. "Why couldn't you just let it go?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because letting go meant letting him win, and I wasn't that woman anymore. The verdict came on a gray morning, the kind that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. Guilty on all counts. David's face crumpled as the judge read the sentence. 5 years, plus restitution. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was emptiness. The courtroom cleared, and I sat there, alone, staring at the empty chair where David had been. Rachel touched my shoulder. "You did it," she said. I nodded, but the words felt hollow. I'd taken everything back, but at what cost? Lily was waiting when I got home. She didn't ask about the trial, didn't mention David. Instead, she handed me a drawing of family, 3 stick figures holding hands, smiling under a bright sun. "Can we be like this again?" she asked, her voice breaking. I pulled her close, tears burning my eyes. "We'll try, baby," I said. But I didn't know if we could. The pieces of our family were scattered, and I wasn't sure I could put them back together. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about redemption. Not David's mine. I'd fought for justice, but I'd lost sight of love, of forgiveness. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe I could find a way to heal, for Lily, for myself. But first, I had to face the truth. Revenge hadn't fixed me. It had only shown me how broken I was. The house felt too big without David's presence, even if that presence had been a lie. I wandered from room to room, touching the things we'd bought together: the oak table where we'd argued over bills, the couch where we'd watched movies with Lily curled between us. Each memory was a wound, but I couldn't stop picking at it. Lily was quieter now, her laughter a rare sound that broke my heart every time I heard it. She'd visit David in prison, coming back with stories of how he was trying or sorry. I didn't believe it, but I didn't say that. She needed her father, even if he was a ghost of the man she deserved. I threw myself into work, taking on extra shifts at the library where I'd been a part-time clerk for years. It wasn't much, but it kept me busy, kept my mind off the emptiness. My coworkers tiptoed around me, their piteous silent weight. I didn't want their sympathy, but I didn't know how to tell them that. I was Ellen Harper, the woman who'd brought down her husband, the woman who'd won. But I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a survivor, barely holding on. Rachel called one afternoon with news. The business assets I'd claimed were finally liquid, enough to pay off the loan and secure the house. It was a victory, but it came with a catch. Taxes, legal fees, a chunk gone to Victor's payoff. I'd fought for every penny, but in the end, I was left with just enough to start over. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the numbers, wondering if it was worth it. The money didn't bring back the years I'd lost, the trust I'd given David, the family I'd believed in. Lily started acting out small things at first, like missing curfew or talking back. Then one night, she didn't come home. I called her phone, her friends, even the police, my heart racing with every unanswered ring. She showed up at 2 a.m., her eyes red, her breath sharp with the tang of alcohol. I was with Dad's friends, she said, defiant, before collapsing into sobs. I held her, my anger dissolving into fear. She was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I started therapy, dragging Lily along despite her protests. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, talked about grief, about rebuilding trust. Lily rolled her eyes, but I listened, clinging to every word like a lifeline. Dr. Ellis asked me to write a letter to David, not to send, just to get it out. I sat up late one night, pen in hand, pouring out 15 years of love, anger, and pain. I wrote about the loan, the betrayal, the way his laugh had broken me. I wrote about Lily, how she deserved better than us. When I finished, I burned the letter in the backyard, watching the flames eat my words. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like a start. David's mistress, Claire, showed up one day, unannounced. She stood on my porch, her designer bag clutched tightly, her eyes red-rimmed. I didn't know, she said, her voice shaking. About the loan, about you. I wanted to hate her, to scream, but all I felt was pity. She was another victim of David's charm, another piece in his game. I invited her in, poured her coffee, and we talked. She told me about his promises, his lies, the way he'd made her feel special. It was like hearing my own story from years ago. When she left, I gave her Rachel's number. Get a lawyer, I said. Protect yourself. She nodded, and I wondered if I'd just made an ally or another enemy. The community started talking, whispers turning into stares. At the grocery store, the park, the library, I felt their eyes on me, judging. Some called me brave, others vindictive. I didn't care what they thought, but it hurt Lily. She stopped going to soccer practice, stopped inviting friends over. I tried to talk to her, but she'd just shrug and say, "It's fine, Mom." It wasn't fine, but I didn't know how to fix it. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, a place Rachel recommended. It was hard at first, hearing stories of betrayal and loss that echoed mine, but it gave me purpose. I helped women file restraining orders, find jobs, rebuild their lives. Each small victory felt like a step toward redemption, a way to balance the scales of what I'd done. I brought Lily once, hoping she'd see why I fought so hard. She didn't say much, but she helped organize donations, her hands quick and careful. For the first time in months, I saw a spark of the girl she used to be. One night, I found a letter under my pillow, written in Lily's careful script. "I'm sorry I've been mean," it said. "I miss Dad, but I love you. Can we try again?" I cried, clutching the paper, feeling the weight of hope for the first time in months. I went to her room, sat on her bed, and we really talked about everything. The loan, the trial, the pain. She listened, her eyes wide, and when I finished, she hugged me. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said. It was enough. I wasn't done fighting, not yet. There were still debts to pay, wounds to heal. But for the first time, I felt like I could do it not for revenge, but for love. For Lily. For me. The months blurred into a rhythm of survival. I woke early, made breakfast for Lily, went to work, and came home to a house that still felt like it belonged to someone else. The legal battles were over, but the emotional ones were just beginning. Lily was trying. I could see Ither's small gestures, like setting the table without being asked or leaving notes on the fridge. "Love you, Mom." But there were still days when she'd look at me like I was the enemy, like I'd stolen her father from her. I didn't know how to fix that, but I kept trying, one day at a time. I started seeing Dr. Ellis alone, peeling back layers of anger and guilt I hadn't realized I was carrying. She asked hard questions. Why did I need to destroy David? Was it justice or pride? I didn't have answers, not good ones, but talking helped. I began to see the choices I'd made, not just the loan, the trial, the revenge, but the years before, when I'd ignored the cracks in our marriage, when I'd let David's charm blind me to his flaws. I wasn't innocent, not entirely. That truth was bitter, but it was also freeing. The shelter became my refuge. The women there were fighters, each one carrying a story heavier than the last. I listened, helped, learned. One woman, Maria, reminded me of myself betrayed by a husband who'd used her name to fund his dreams. I helped her file for divorce, sat with her through tears and paperwork, and when she thanked me, her eyes shining, I felt something shift. Maybe this was redemption, not in grand gestures, but in these quiet moments of connection. Lily started opening up, slowly. One night, over pizza, she talked about David's prison visits. He's different now, she said, picking at her crust. He talks about you, Mom. Says he messed up. I nodded, unsure what to feel. Part of me wanted to believe he'd changed, but the other part, the part that still hurt, is laughed and trusted. I changed the subject, asking about school, but her words lingered. Was David capable of remorse? Did it matter? Claire, the mistress, called me one day, her voice nervous. She'd taken my advice, hired a lawyer, and was suing David for money he'd promised her. I found something, she said. Bank records, offshore accounts. I think it's bigger than we thought. My pulse quickened. I'd thought I was done with David's secrets, but here was another thread to pull. I met her at a park, away from prying eyes, and she handed me a USB drive. Be careful, Ellen, she said. He's not done fighting. I took the drive to Rachel, who was skeptical but intrigued. We spent hours combing through the files, transfers, shell companies, names I didn't recognize. David had been hiding more than I'd imagined, a network of lies that stretched beyond Nexus. Rachel contacted the SEC again, and they reopened the case. I didn't want to get pulled back in, but I couldn't walk away. Not when there was a chance to uncover the full truth. Lily overheard me talking to Rachel one night and confronted me. Why can't you let it go? She yelled, her voice cracking. Dad's in jail, Mom. Isn't that enough? I tried to explain, but she didn't want to hear it. She stormed out, and I didn't see her until the next morning. When she came back, she was quiet, her eyes red. I don't want to lose you too, she whispered. I held her, promising I'd stop, but deep down, I knew I wasn't done. The new investigation moved slowly, but it uncovered enough to extend David's sentence. He'd been funneling money to offshore accounts, evading taxes, defrauding investors. The feds offered me a deal, testify again, and they'd protect my assets. I agreed, but not for the money. I wanted answers, closure, something to make sense of the chaos. The courtroom was familiar now, almost comforting in its coldness. I testified, my voice steady, laying out the new evidence. David didn't look at me this time. He stared at the floor, defeated. When it was over, I went to the shelter, needing to feel useful. Maria was there, packing her things. She'd gotten a job, a small apartment, a fresh start. You saved me, she said, hugging me. I shook my head, tears in my eyes. You saved yourself, I told her. But her words stayed with me, a reminder that I could still do good, even after everything. That night, I sat with Lily on the porch, watching the stars. I'm sorry, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. For all of it. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. I know, Mom, she said. I just want us to be okay. I nodded, my throat tight. We weren't okay, not yet, but we were trying. And for now, that was enough. The seasons changed, leaves falling, then blooming again, but the weight of the past lingered. I'd thought exposing David's final secrets would free me, but it only left me with more questions. Who was the man I'd married? Had he ever loved me? Or was I just a piece in his game? I didn't have answers, and the silence was deafening. Lily, though, was my light. She started smiling more, laughing at my bad jokes, helping in the kitchen. We were rebuilding, slowly, brick by brick. The shelter gave me purpose, but it also gave me perspective. I saw women who'd lost more than I had: homes, children, hope, and still fought to stand again. I started a support group, a place for them to share their stories, to heal. I shared mine too, not the polished version, but the raw one, the anger, the revenge, the guilt. They listened, nodded, understood. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. David wrote me a letter from prison. I found it in the mailbox, his handwriting a jolt from the past. He apologized, said he'd changed, asked for forgiveness. I read it once, then tucked it away. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but I didn't burn it. That was progress, I suppose. Lily asked about it, and I told her the truth. He's sorry, I said, but sorry doesn't fix everything. She nodded, her eyes older than her years. Will you ever talk to him again? She asked. I didn't know. Rachel called with news. The offshore accounts had been seized, and I was entitled to a portion of the recovered funds. It wasn't much, not after legal fees, but it was enough to pay for Lily's college, to give her a future. I cried when I signed the papers, not for the money, but for what it meant. I'd fought for her, and maybe, just maybe, I'd won something that mattered. Claire reached out again, this time with an apology. She'd settled her lawsuit, walked away with enough to start over. I hated you for a while, she admitted over coffee. But you were right. I needed to protect myself. We weren't friends, not exactly, but we understood each other. She told me about her plans, a small business, a new city, a clean slate. I envied her, in a way. She was free in a way I wasn't, not yet. Lily started therapy on her own, a choice that surprised me, but made me proud. She didn't talk about it much, but I saw the changeless anger, more openness. One day, she brought home a painting from art class, a vibrant swirl of colors that reminded me of hope. It's us, she said, pointing to two figures in the center, holding hands. I hung it in the living room, a reminder of what we were fighting for. The community still whispered, but their voices were softer now, less accusing. I ran into old friends at the grocery store, people who'd avoided me during the trial. They asked how I was, offered hugs, invited me to coffee. I accepted, cautiously, rebuilding bridges I'd thought were burned. It wasn't easy, but it felt right, like I was reclaiming pieces of myself I'd lost. I visited David in prison, a decision I wrestled with for weeks. He looked smaller, his hair graying, his charm dimmed. We sat across from each other, a glass wall between us. I'm sorry, Ellen, he said, his voice low. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I mean it. I studied him, searching for the man I'd loved, but he was gone. I hope you find peace, I said, and I meant it. Not for him, but for me. I walked out, the weight on my chest a little lighter. Back home, I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Short stories, mostly, about women like me, women who fought and fell and got up again. I shared one with the support group, nervous, expecting criticism. Instead, they clapped, some with tears in their eyes. Keep writing, Maria said. You've got a voice. I wasn't sure if she was right, but I kept going, filling notebooks with words that felt like truth. Lily and I planted a garden that spring, a small patch of flowers and vegetables behind the house. We worked side by side, dirt under our nails, laughing when the hose sprayed us by accident. It was a small thing, but it felt like a promisea new beginning, not just for us, but for the family we were becoming. I looked at her, my fierce, beautiful girl, and knew I'd do it all again, every painful step, to give her this moment. Time has a way of softening edges, doesn't it? The anger that once burned in my chest had dulled to a quiet ache, a reminder of what was, but not what had to be. Lily was thriving, her grades climbing, her smile brighter. She'd joined the debate team, her voice sharp and confident, and I watched her at a competition one Saturday, my heart swelling with pride. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger than I'd ever been at her age. I wanted to believe I'd had a hand in that, but I knew she'd done most of the work herself. The shelter grew too. We got funding for a new program, one I helped design, financial literacy for women starting over. I taught classes, sharing what I'd learned the hard way about loans, credit, trust. The women listened, asked questions, trusted me. It was humbling, seeing my pain turned into something useful. Maria, now a regular volunteer, teased me about being a finance guru. I laughed, but inside, I felt a spark of purpose I hadn't known I needed. David's letters kept coming, one every few months. I read them, sometimes answered, short notes that didn't promise anything. He was taking classes in prison, he said, learning about addiction, about accountability. I didn't know if I believed him, but I didn't hate him anymore. That was something. Lily visited him regularly, and I let her, trusting her to navigate that relationship on her own. She'd come back with stories, small Anissa joke he'd told, a book he'd recommended. I listened, nodded, kept my doubts to myself. Rachel and I stayed close, meeting for coffee when her schedule allowed. She'd taken on new clients, but she always made time for me. You're a fighter, Ellen, she said one day, her eyes warm. Don't forget that. I smiled, but I didn't feel like a fighter. I felt like a woman who'd survived, piecing herself back together with duct tape and hope. She told me about a new case, another woman betrayed by her husband, and I offered to help. It felt good, being part of something bigger than my own pain. Claire moved away, sending me a postcard from Seattle. New life, new me, she wrote. I tucked it into a drawer, a reminder that we could all start over, even after everything. I wondered if she'd found peace, if she'd forgiven herself. I was still working on that part. Dr. Ellis helped, asking questions that forced me to look at myself, not the victim, not the avenger, but the woman I was now. "What do you want, Ellen?" she asked one session. I didn't have an answer, not yet, not fully, but I was starting to see it. A life where I wasn't defined by David's betrayal. The community was kinder now, the whispers fading. I joined a book club, started running again, small steps toward normalcy. Lily noticed, teasing me about my old lady hobbies. I laughed, chased her around the kitchen with a dish towel, and for a moment, we were just us, a mother and daughter, not a family scarred by revenge. Those moments were rare, but they were enough to keep me going. I kept writing, my stories growing bolder, more honest. I sent one to a local literary magazine, expecting rejection. Instead, they published it, my words in print for the first time. I bought 10 copies, gave one to Lily, who read it in silence, then hugged me. "It's good, Mom," she said, her voice soft. "It's really good." I cried later, alone, not because I was sad, but because I was starting to believe in myself again. One day, I found an old photo in a drawer. David, Lily, and me at the beach, laughing, sunburned, happy. I didn't throw it away. I put it in an album, a piece of the past I didn't need to erase. I wasn't that woman anymore, but she was part of me, part of the story that had brought me here. I showed it to Lily, and we talked about the good times, the ones before everything fell apart. She smiled, a real smile, and I felt hope, fragile but real. The garden we'd planted was blooming now, bright flowers mixed with vegetables we'd cooked together. Lily loved the tomatoes, sneaking them before they were fully ripe. I'd scold her, laughing, and she'd grin, her mouth red with juice. Those moments were my redemption, small and ordinary, but more powerful than any courtroom victory. I wasn't done healing, not by a long shot, but I was moving forward, one step at a time, with Lily by my side. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to find out. I'd taken everything back, not just the house, the money, but myself. And that, I realized, was the real victory. The days grew shorter, winter creeping in with its sharp bite, but the house felt warmer now, filled with the small rituals Lily and I had built. We'd bake cookies on Sundays, her hands sticky with dough, her laughter louder than the radio. We'd watch old movies, curled up under a blanket, arguing over which one was best. These were the moments I'd fought for, the ones I'd almost lost in my quest for justice. I held them close, knowing how fragile they were. The shelter was thriving, our support group growing. Women came from all over, some with bruises, some with scars you couldn't see. I listened, shared, learned. One night, a woman named Sarah told a story so close to mine it hurt. Her husband had used her name, her credit, her trust, and left her with nothing. I hugged her after, promised her she wasn't alone. Later, I wrote about her, fictionalized but true, pouring her pain and mine into words that felt like healing. David's letters stopped for a while, then started again, more earnest this time. He talked about therapy, about facing his mistakes. I didn't know if I believed him, but I read every word, searching for something real. Lily told me he was teaching a class in prison, helping other inmates with reading. "He's trying, Mom," she said, her voice hopeful. I nodded, but I didn't trust it. Not yet. Trust was a muscle I was still learning to use. Rachel invited me to a conference, a gathering of women lawyers and activists. I went, nervous, feeling out of place among their polished suits and sharp minds. But they welcomed me, asked about the shelter, my story. I spoke, my voice shaky at first, then stronger, about surviving betrayal, about rebuilding. They listened, applauded, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere bigger than my pain. Lily started talking about college, her eyes bright with plans. She wanted to study psychology, to help people like Dr. Ellis had helped her. I listened, my heart full, and promised to support her, no matter what. We looked at schools online, laughing at the cheesy brochures, dreaming together. It was a new kind of intimacy, one we'd earned through the hard years. Claire sent another postcard, this time from Portland. She'd opened a bakery, was dating someone new. Thanks for showing me I could start over, she wrote. I smiled, tucking it away. I didn't need her gratitude, but it felt good, knowing we'd both found a way forward. I wondered if David ever thought about her, if he regretted losing her too. The community was different now, not just kinder but curious. They invited me to speak at a local event, a fundraiser for the shelter. I was terrified, but I said yes. Standing in front of a crowd, I told my story, not the polished version, but the messy one, the one with mistakes and regrets. They listened, some crying, some nodding. Afterward, a woman approached me, her voice quiet. You gave me hope, she said. I didn't know how to respond, so I just hugged her, my eyes burning. My writing was gaining traction. Another magazine published a story, then a third. I started a blog, anonymous at first, sharing pieces of my journey. Readers responded, leaving comments about their own betrayals, their own fights. I answered everyone, feeling a connection I hadn't expected. Writing wasn't just therapy now, it was a bridge, linking me to others who'd walked the same path. Lily and I took a trip that winter, a weekend at the beach, the same one from the old photo. We built a sandcastle, laughed when the waves knocked it down, ate ice cream despite the cold. She talked about David, about missing him but understanding why things had to change. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said, her hand in mine. I squeezed it, my throat tight. I'm proud of you too, I said. As we drove home, the stars bright above us, I thought about redemption. Not the kind you read about in books, where everything ties up neatly, but the real kind, messy, slow, earned. I'd taken everything back, not just from David, but from the part of me that had wanted to destroy him. I was still learning, still healing, but I was moving towards something better. Lily was with me, and that was enough. For now, it was everything. Spring came, and with it, a sense of renewal I hadn't dared hope for. The garden was a riot of color, Lily's tomatoes ripening alongside my marigolds. We'd sit on the porch, sipping lemonade, talking about everything and nothing. She was 17 now, taller than me, with a confidence that made me ache with pride. She'd been accepted to her top-choice college, a small school with a strong psychology program. I cried when she showed me the letter, not because I was sad, but because she was building a future I'd fought to give her. The shelter was my second home now. I'd taken on a leadership role, coordinating programs, speaking at events. The women called me their rock, but they were mine. Their strength, their stories, reminded me why I'd kept going. Maria was running her own group now, her smile brighter than ever. We'd laugh about our early days, when we were both scared, both starting over. You changed my life, she said one day, her hand on mine. I shook my head, but inside, I felt the truth of it had changed each other. David's release was coming up, a fact that loomed like a storm cloud. Lily wanted him at her graduation, and I didn't say no. I wasn't ready to see him, but I'd do it for her. When the day came, I stood in the back of the auditorium, watching her walk across the stage, her cap tilted, her smile wide. David was there, in a suit that didn't quite fit, his face lined with time. He clapped for her, his eyes wet, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd loved, the one who'd promised me forever. After, we talked, awkward and brief. You look good, Ellen, he said, his voice soft. I nodded, unsure what to say. You did right by her, he added, glancing at Lily, who was laughing with friends. I didn't answer, but I felt a weight lift, just a little. He wasn't my enemy anymore, just a man who'd made mistakes, like I had. We weren't friends, wouldn't be, but we were parents, and that was enough. My writing had become a career, unexpected but welcome. A small press offered to publish a collection of my stories, and I said yes, my hands shaking as I signed the contract. Lily helped me pick the title, Broken but Blooming. It fit. I was still broken in places, but I was blooming too, growing into someone I liked. The book launch was small, just friends, family, and a few women from the shelter. Lily read a passage, her voice steady, and I cried, not caring who saw. The community embraced me now, not as the woman who'd brought down her husband, but as Ellen, the one who helped, who listened, who wrote. I spoke at more events, sharing my story, not to boast, but to show what was possible. People listened, asked questions, thanked me. It wasn't about fame. It was about connection, about giving others the courage to fight their own battles. Lily left for college that fall, her car packed with boxes, her smile nervous but excited. I hugged her, too tightly, and she laughed. I'll be back, Mom, she said. You're stuck with me. I watched her drive away, my heart full and breaking at the same time. The house was quiet without her, but I wasn't alone. I had the shelter, my writing, myself. One night, I sat at my desk, a blank page before me. I started writing, not a story this time, but a letter to myself, to the woman I'd been, the one who trusted too much, fought too hard, loved despite everything. I thanked her for her strength, her mistakes, her heart. I forgave her, and in doing so, forgave David, just a little. Not for him, but for me, for the peace I was finally finding. The garden bloomed on, a testament to what Lily and I had built. I tended it, alone now, but not lonely. I'd taken everything back me home, my daughter, my soul. The cost had been high, but the reward was higher. I was Ellen Harper, not perfect, not whole, but enough. And as I looked out at the flowers, their colors bright against the fading light, I knew I'd keep blooming, no matter what came next.